Carson, Leno, Fallon. Now, it's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today about to have a conversation with Dana Spaulding of Wander and Ivy Wines. Introductions in just a second. Wine Talks, of course, available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, wherever you hang out for your podcasting, and sponsored by the Original Wine of the Month Club, now sporting the Napa and Sweet series of wines. Hey, have a listen to Guillaume Alexandre Marx of Chateau Haut-Brion, one of the premier growths of the 1855 classification of Bordeaux. Incredible conversation about the history of the chateau and the history of the family that owns the chateau. Have a listen to that. It just came out. But not why we're here today. We're here to have a conversation with Dana Spaulding, CEO and founder, probably chief bottle washer, and who knows what else of Wander and Ivy Wines. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Where are we located right now?
I'm in Denver, Colorado. It's a little chilly.
Denver, Colorado. Wow. Have you guys had this crazy weather that we've had like down here? Like we're flooded.
You know, not the rains. We've had more snow. Normally we always get it in the mountains, but right now it's actually snowing, which is just making it a little chilly here right now.
You know, there's this, we'll get into the idea of where you source your grapes and how you make your wines, but, you know, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, that whole belt is not necessarily known for its wine trade.
Correct.
But I was reading a book about Burgundy the other day during the war, and this is not a political show. We don't talk about, you know, how climate change came around and all the rest of it, but it does happen. But it was interesting to read that in 1940, they had such a poor crop because the weather was so wacky because they had a frost in June.
Wild.
Isn't that crazy?
It really is. In 1940.
In 1940. So,
yeah.
You know, there wasn't much of well, again, I'm not going to get political. Okay, so.
Yeah. But fascinating. Yeah.
So what's happening in Colorado when it comes to wine? This is such an interesting story. Wander and Ivy is basically a single serve. Is that what you're going to call it?
Correct. Single serve, premium organic single serve wine. Here's a look at it, Paul, if you haven't received your samples yet, which we're getting to you. But yeah, good. All premium organic single serve.
And we're going to get a little tongue in cheek here because this is a tough industry. It's hard to get into. It's hard to break into. It's hard to get out of, like I'm trying to do in certain parts of my life. Yeah. But it gets under your skin. You know, you really kind of gets to you, and the challenges of this wine industry really kind of make things happen sometimes in the back of your mind. But you weren't always doing this. You were doing something else.
I was always in finance. Prior to founding Wander and Ivy, I was in private wealth management with JP Morgan. Half my career was in New York City office and half was in the Rocky Mountain region. And in Denver, Colorado, I was fortunate to cover the food and beverage category, which really just got me interested. But like you said, wasn't specifically in the world of wine before.
So what would that have been if the food and beverage category, what would that cover typically?
Oh, for us, I mean, especially in Colorado, there are incredible granola companies, nut butter companies, and, you know, especially here, there was such a focus on natural and organic products. So it was honestly products across the board, you know, kombuchas when it came to beverage, but it wasn't necessarily alcohol. I was very focused on managing wealth for entrepreneurs in the food and beverage. Sometimes they called it health and wellness because there were some ancillary businesses that kind of touched food and beverage, but I loved it. I just loved that they were building these fascinating, innovative companies, building them up, and then they would sell them, come into a large amount of wealth, and my team and I would manage that wealth for them. And so I thought, that looks pretty fun and fascinating on that other side of it. What could I do that was similar?
What was inspiring, fascinating about it? The large wealth at the end of the rainbow, or the idea that they created something from nothing and how satisfying that is?
I mean, I think it would be a lie if anyone says they're not at all fascinated by the former, but honestly, it was the latter. My job oftentimes was to get to know these entrepreneurs for years. My husband is still in the industry. That's where he and I met. And so he and I would spend years getting to know entrepreneurs because you never know when that transaction is going to happen. And so I really got to know them and their families, the hustle, the hard work, and somewhat understand their journey along the way. And the idea of building something from nothing was so incredibly exciting to me. It was also, since I was really little, exciting that my dad is an entrepreneur and he had built many companies in a very different category. He was always in medical supply industry, but I was always admire the building something from nothing. And I thought, how cool would it be to be able to do something that in a category that I saw a huge gap in, which is what led to the creation of Wander and Ivy.
So let's say, what are these seven no, I'm kidding. But there are, the entrepreneurs are a rare breed. There's I have very good friends that spent their careers in the banking business as, middle management and upper management, and they retired and they got their pension. And the entrepreneur has a different sort of outlook on life. We're going to take a risk and we're going to see if we can pull it off. Was that sort of your DNA already?
Oh,
you saw this inspiring idea and you just jumped 2 feet into it?
I would say already. Someone recently described it as a masochist. I was like,
yeah, that'd be a good accurate description.
Yeah, I actually thought that is incredibly accurate, and I would fit that mold. But I will say, wanting to manage and own something of my own and lead in a way was always something I wanted to do. I just was for a long time looking for an idea, something that would be so different if I did it, to step into a category. And so, I was like the classic, my husband and I both like took our GMATs, we're going to go to business school because we both wanted at some point to do something. We just didn't know what it was until that spark came. And I would say that kind of drive to build something of my own was always there, probably since I was little with my dad. But then especially watching my clients do it, I thought, gosh, that would be incredible to build a life. We've really built a life that we were looking for, which was
basically
so it was very exciting to be able to step into it / terrifying, of course.
It's kind of interesting. I had worked for Fortune 500. I worked for Xerox, and it's not about me, so I'll make the story short. But when my father came to me and said, look, I'm getting out of this and you got to take a look at it. I was petrified, though I felt prepared because I'd done some other things that were pretty risky. But I went back to Xerox, where I had worked, and interviewed with a sales manager to see if maybe I went back to corporate America. And she set me straight. She looked at me, she goes, are you nuts? We all want to get out of here.
Yeah.
You have an opportunity to get out or stay out, actually, because I was already out, and not come back to this hierarchy of people. And I like, wow, you know what, that was really very wise actually on her part. So is that I don't know if that's the prevailing outlook for everybody in corporate America, but I can certainly see in your realm, if you're seeing all this success and you have that in your DNA, it's like, maybe it's time.
I couldn't agree more. It's a very comfortable, cushy, high paid life that I was in, and I worked really hard for it. And I would say in many ways, I liked my job. And so that was hard to step away, like you said, terrifying to step away from. But they do call it, at least where I was, golden handcuffs, where, at some point, if you don't like it, it might not matter because your world is built around that cash that's coming in every month. And it's just so high that it's really, really hard. The longer you stay, the harder it is to walk away from. So that was something that rung true to me. And I felt like you could hear it in the older folks that were there. Again, I loved it. I honestly had a great experience, thought it set me up for success. But if you hear sometimes some older folks there, or in any kind of more senior finance role, not loving it, and you hear the term golden handcuffs, you're like, well, I'm not sure if that's for me, So I feel fortunate to have learned what I learned, because I truly, especially as an investor-backed company, it very much set me up for success. But I am thrilled with where I am now. And I really can't imagine going back to a type of large, multi-billion-dollar public company like that again.
Impossible. My friend, another way to put it, my friend worked for Microsoft during his ascent, and he had what they call the FU price. As soon as the stock got a certain price.
I'm very familiar with that.
It's very funny. So you're sitting around. I have great stories about, for instance, how they invented the spoon straw or the flexi straw. The inventor's sitting around the kitchen table, and he snips an old straw and he comes up with the spoon straw. What were you doing when you decided, wow, we need 187 milliliter bottle of wine for housewives or people that are pregnant, or, I mean, what did this come from?
Honestly, it was because my husband had said to me, it was Monday, I wanted a nice celebratory glass. I went to open a bottle, and he just very casually was like, are you really going to open another bottle of wine and waste it? And it truly was, for me, just super frustrating. And I was annoyed at him because I said, yeah, I want to open a bottle. I'll probably have a glass. So what? And he said, you need to stop wasting wine, and you're not going to drink it all tonight. You hardly ever do. And you throw away a portion of it a couple days later. And so that was just for me an interesting personal experience, because I went to the store, again, not in a business aspect, but just went, shopped, kind of grabbed all of the cans, bags, boxes that I could find and put it in the fridge. My first inclination was actually to not drink it. My husband was then further annoyed because he said, okay, well, you bought all this stuff and now it's just sitting there. And I realized none of them actually felt like a luxury when I was wanting to have, whether it was a celebratory glass or just one nice glass at the end of a long day, a can, or, pouring from a box. It just didn't feel like a luxury. And I thought, okay, well, this is interesting to me now. Let's taste through, let's see what they all taste like. And then it became more of a business exercise where, okay, let's kind of sample everything out in the market. And I've tasted and just felt like there was such a gap of a luxury innovative package with luxury wine inside at an affordable price point, because of course there's Coravin and all the other contraptions that you can use, but they do come with a price tag. And you have the really low quality, inexpensive stuff to the higher quality, Coravin. And I was like, there's got to be something in between where you can get a great glass of wine, premium. And then when I dug in further and realized how little focus was on natural organic ingredients, especially in alternative packaging, I thought, all right, there's a lot of checks here of differentiators that if I'm going to step into a category that feels pretty crowded, let's do this in such a differentiated way. This could be very successful. And then once I started hearing all of the, doing the market research with both kind of industry experts like you, Paul, tasting it and giving feedback, but then also just our kind of target demographic market focus groups, and hearing so many folks like me wanting something like this, I was like, all right, there's something here.
That's a pretty big leap of faith in a very crowded, very tough industry. And cans, I've done a lot of can tasting, and they're coming around a little bit. They're starting to put appellated wines, the vintage wines in them. I've tasted a Pinot Noir from Napa in a can that was quite good, though they're typically over sulfured. But that took some bravado to step into this marketplace and figure this out and try and do it. And you're right, they're not a lot of 187s, and for the listeners, I'm going to say a 187 is a quarter of a bottle, a wine bottle being 750 ml, which is a large pour at a restaurant. Usually it's 5 glasses to a bottle, maybe 6 in some restaurants. So this is a pretty substantial pour that you've created. What were you drinking then? What were you, if you're going to open that bottle of wine, your husband was so upset with you, what was it? Like a bottle of Premier Cru, Grand Cru or something?
No, it wasn't a Grand Cru, but it was Prisoner. So, it's, I was just like, come on, it's not that.
$30.
Yeah, it's fine. I was like, it's not. And he kept being like, regardless, you're going to waste it at the end of the day. And so we laughed. I was just like, well, all right, fine, you're right. But you're right in that I wanted a hefty pour, and I was like, okay, I want a good pour. 375 seems more than I need for a single glass. But then I also tried some of the wines like Vinebox, which is a lovely business model in the wine club that it is, but it felt so small in that it was 3 ounces. And so for me, I thought that 6.3 ounces, 187 milliliter landed in the middle for what I was looking for, which was that nice glass of wine. It was a nice pour. It didn't feel like a sample. It was a true glass, but also wasn't going to make me feel like that was a little too much with 375 for one sitting. So I landed on that, and it has been a great strategy for us.
Well, let me introduce you to a lower tech version. And this is a true story. In my dad's shop in the 70s in Palos Verdes, we used to sell a bag of marbles, and they were specifically to raise the level of wine in a bottle that you drank half of. So if you drank half a bottle of wine, you'd buy these marbles, and then you drop the marbles in there, and the wine level would rise up to the neck, and then you put the cork back in.
That's awesome. There you go. There you go. That's a very low, much lower tech. I love it.
that'd be an alternative, right?
Yeah, there you
So,
go.
because the core van is expensive,
It is.
the vacuum van does not work.
Yeah.
Private preserve, the spray, a couple of spurges, it doesn't last very long. It doesn't seem to work.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting thing. So now you realize you're sitting here and you go, okay, I've got this idea.
Yeah.
And you looked around, you've seen there's Tetra packs, which is like, milk carton packs, and there's cans, there's a bag in the box.
Yeah.
And typically, yes, the lower quality wines have been reserved for those enclosures.
Mm-hmm.
But now what was next? I mean, this is not the simple thing. You have to source wine. You have to decide what kind of wine. You have to figure out what people are drinking. I mean, what kind of research did you put into deciding what you're going to put in this first round of 187s?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot. Not coming from the industry, I wanted to at least build a knowledge base to even start that process, Paul. So I got my SOM certifications with the court and then the International Wine Guild to just build the base of like, okay, help make sure I fully understand the industry and where to start. And then it was initially research driven and building a database of wineries that would fit our mold. So ultimately our business model is that we are a licensed importer as well, where we import wines from around the world, fully finished wines that meet our criteria. And then we bottle, label, package in our patented bottle. And so our database, the universe that we have, consisted of wineries that checked a lot of boxes for us. And so it was family owned, certified organic and recognized by the USDA. It was a certain price point that we wanted to hit because we did want it to be more of a luxury wine, but land at an affordable price point on the shelf. And we wanted to really source from world-renowned wine regions of the world and the varietals that they're known for. And so it was very research-driven at first, finding those. And then it was a tasting process. Initially, it was myself and different, as I mentioned, groups of industry experts, as well as market focus groups with our target demographic, which has expanded, but I would say our core demographic has remained the same with female millennials. And so we had this group of, really master soms, especially here in Colorado, restaurant owners, wine shop owners, distributors that were tasting, as well as the female millennials, and giving us feedback on what they were looking for, what price point they'd be interested in. And so I selected what I felt like was the best initial roundup lineup of products, and then they tasted and helped me even narrow down further. That, of course, process has expanded since my early days. Now we have a team of soms and winemakers that help internally with that, in addition to our external advisors. And we now source from multiple places around the world. We source French Rosé, a California Cab and Chard, a Spanish red blend, and a French Sauvignon Blanc. And so sourced globally, and all the varietals that are from these renowned wine regions around the world.
Let's get honest.
Please.
Instead of lying to you. So don't you love when people say that? Honestly, no, lie to me, right? I'd prefer you lie.
Depends on the occasion.
Going to the Court of Soms and master wine programs and WSET, all these things are excellent forms of academic study for wine and help you understand. And I even have a very close friend who went through the Cornell, during COVID, this Cornell school, but they also now started to grow grapes in their yard, and they started to ferment them. And the harsh reality of this industry, slaps them in the face just recently, actually. And so I think those are great programs and they're academic, but what was it about the reality of this business that after you learned about regions of the world and varietals that grow there, et cetera, that you went, this is not what I learned studying. This is a different program to get wine onto the street. What were some of these headwinds that you thought, wow, this is not what I expected?
I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. I feel like the knowledge gave me a certain level of confidence and honestly credibility, but to a certain extent, you just gotta start and then learn and hit all the roadblocks. And so the biggest challenge up front was, I created this package, it's patented, which we're super proud of, but there was very little to negative interest in partnering with us from a bottling perspective, because I didn't realize how challenging it would be and how little innovation there was in bottling, because it was really just cans. I was stepping into a space where I was like, all right, they've done cans, they've done other packaging, but really stepping into it, what I learned was there's been such little innovation that when I would, approach bottling partners, it would be like, absolutely not. We're going to get quality wine inside of that. I have no interest in partnering with you. There's just no way you can do it. There's no way that you can do something other than, your Sutter Home 187, your can, your traditional 187 or Magnum. We're just not going to get quality in there. And so we had to it took a long time to find partners who were willing to innovate and get the quality wine inside the bottle. We've had to do a tremendous amount of modifications to existing 750 bottling lines. And that, for me, I did not realize how challenging it would be to get quality wine, which also happens to be certified organic. So obviously we are very limited to how much, like you said, cans are dumped with the sulfites. And so for us, we're very, very limited in that. And so we have to be incredibly mindful of that and still preserve and the integrity of the wine inside. So now I will say we're very proud to, we've grown and now we have a custom Wander and Ivy bottling line in the works, which is very, very exciting, which is to the specifics of our bottle. But to get here, it's been a very, very long road to figure out the partners and find them that were willing to innovate.
I spent many, many, many hours over the years at packaging shows for here at the Wine of the Month Club, and just for fun. I think it's a fabulously fascinating industry about packaging, whether it's pills or rice or wine or liquid, bottom fillers, top fillers, the speed. In fact, when I sold copiers at Xerox, I'm talking about 1981, 82, I sold copiers to the manufacturer of the canning line for 7-Up and Coca-Cola. I mean, these machines were amazing back then, and I can't imagine with computer generated technology today what they're like. But, it is a fascinating part of the industry, but it's not part of what you probably expected.
Totally.
We're looking, I'm going to bottle wine so people can have a glass. And now we're talking about creating a brand new machine, to fill these bottles. So that's an amazing education.
It absolutely was. And it continues to be. I mean, I am constantly learning. Like I said, now I am surrounded by people who've been in the industry, who've made wine, that for us, for me in particular, has been a huge learning experience. So I try to surround myself with these people who have so much more knowledge than I do and teach me daily. And now we're in this process of building our own line. And it is incredibly technical, as you know, and challenging. So I feel very proud to have gotten here, but it's been certainly a long journey.
So are you bringing the juice, and for the listeners, the term juice, I had to actually define this for a friend of mine because they thought I meant like orange juice or grape juice, but juice being the fermented wine. Are you bringing it in and bottling it here in America? Or some lines overseas, like you have Valencia Red from Spain, but you're bringing it here in Tetra Paks? I mean, not Tetra Paks, but Tetra Tech vinyl bags, or what are we doing?
We bring in fully finished wine. So we are the importer, and we bring in all fully finished wines, and we bottle, label, package everything here at our facility in California. Correct. But
the taxes are cheaper, so that's better. And and the quality control of that. So let's say you're going to buy this Valencia Red, and you taste some barrel samples or tank samples. Do you blend it at that point? Are you getting Grenache and
they blend? So fully finished, our red blend is a 55-45 mix of Bobal and Merlot. That's all done with our partner vineyard in Valencia, and we bring it almost always fully ready to go. Sometimes our winemaker will make minor tweaks, but largely it's fully finished and ready to go.
And so what were the headwinds to finding these organic farms to send you wine? Let's talk about organic farms. There's different certifications for different parts of the world. We're talking about in Europe. In Europe, that's a little more lenient than American certification.
Sure is. Sure is.
So
go ahead.
Was that a difficult challenge to find organic farms that produce wines of palatable quality?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it was a learning experience for me too, because I would get so excited as an early business owner finding these suppliers, because initially, I'm kind of making the pitch. We don't have a product or anything to sample them on, even though I'm wanting to buy their wine, I'm also pitching myself in terms of why we should partner together. And so I would get so excited. There were multiple suppliers in Europe and New Zealand that I was very interested in very early on in partnering with. And then I realized at the final stage, when we're doing all of the, legal analysis and review of the ingredients, that they have one or two ingredients that the USDA doesn't allow. And so, but their countries allow and call it organic, but ours is pretty strict. And so it was frustrating because I'd get far down the line. They were learning lessons of, okay, first question up front when I'm exploring partnerships is a full list of ingredients, because you can clearly check them off right away if they're not checking those boxes. But there were some really interesting partners early on that I just had to say, maybe we'll explore down the road, but right now we do have a focus on certified organic by the USDA. And so I definitely just had to understand every single ingredient that was going into their wine and how we would be able to label that here in the United States.
That's a good thought. What do you think of that? And I'm looking in the back of your box here.
Yeah.
See the certified organic, you've got the government markings, but what do you think of the actual idea of putting the ingredients like food ingredients, calories, sugar content?
It's
what's your opinion of that?
It's actually something that we're adding. We're just about to launch 4 packs, and we've a newer one that you even have with you, Paul. Every time we've done it, we've been asked really by our consumers of wanting to have more information. So more tasting notes on it is an example for the one that you have, of really giving more information there. And over the last couple of years, we have gotten more and more consumers wanting to know all the things that you just said. Are there added sugars? What's the calorie count? From the beginning, one of the things that got me interested in doing natural and organic wines was I didn't know, and coming from an outside industry, that there were no regulatory requirements on those things when it came to wine, that you didn't have to tell folks. And so it's really a choice. I found that fascinating because I do fall in the category of people that check the ingredients on all of their food and every other beverage that I drink. And I have 2 little ones, and now I'm hyper focused on the ingredient list. And so although I think it's interesting that wineries have the choice, for us, we're actually leaning more and more towards giving more and more information to the consumer in a way that just makes them feel empowered for how they're making their decision. So actually in future boxes of ours, our wine is so small at 187. So I would have to be so mindful of there are things, like you said, the government warnings and others that we have to say. So I don't know if we'll add it all to the bottle, but at least for now, Paul, it is on our website, certain things that you had just mentioned. And on the back of our new packaging, we're looking to add things like calorie count, just to give them information, the consumers. I think the more information, the better.
There's a counter argument, which I hear from many winemakers, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
That is, like, you don't go to the kitchen and ask a chef, what are you putting in my food? You order it off the menu and you like it, or you don't like it.
Yeah.
However, what bothers me about this industry, and it's never going to change, is that we created these monsters full of sugar, and all the other ingredients, the 76 things you can put in a wine in America. To acidulate it, or to round it out, or whatever you want to do, defoamers, all the things you can put into a wine as you're making it. And so we created those in the first place. And now we're going back to what wine was in the first place.
Yeah.
Because for all those years, and I'm not talking now 8,000 years or so, and up until recently, I'm talking about recent history, I'm talking to maybe the 40s or 50s, when the Bordelais invented copper sulfate, wine was honest.
Yeah.
You didn't put things in it. There wasn't anything to put in it. There weren't pesticides, insecticides, or herbicides to bother the vineyards. Yeah. And so now we're acting like, wow, we're really producing something honest. Well, it always was honest. So it bothers me that man created the problem in the first place, and then we're backing off, going back to what I think an honest glass of wine.
Yeah.
And that's the term I've been using. I want an honest glass of wine. And if I drink an honest glass of wine, it's not going to have those things in it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I love that. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's just going back to the way in which the wine should be. But for me, what was interesting was, as what I thought was a pretty knowledgeable consumer in general, I found it fascinating that I didn't know a lot of those things. And I think not getting too general, or generalizing, but I think that a lot of consumers are not aware of the many things that you can put in. And so for me, if as a consumer, I think the more transparent we could get and more information we could provide about getting to the honest glass, the better. So I lean towards that. And we're actually, every new package, we're adding more and more based on, really, because we have this DTC and wholesale. It is interesting to get both sides of the feedback there. And particularly the direct to consumer, we definitely get a lot of those questions. And so we're answering all the time individual questions. We thought might as well just make it much more public information on our website and our packaging.
Two different things, two different worlds you're in.
Yes.
The DTC world is very interesting because I've been doing this for so long, and we started as a small wine shop, like I said, in Palos Verdes Estates in the 70s. A lot of wineries that didn't do DTC do it now. It's very important for their part of their business. It's very important because you go directly to retail from manufacturing side, so there's no importer, and I mean no importer, but no distributor in the middle. But it's a different business. I mean, you kind of have two personalities here. They don't really cross over that much. How are you managing that?
I will say you're right. They're two very different beasts. Our DTC, we actually are about 50-50 too, in terms of the percentage of the business. And we have entire different teams focused on that, on those two different sides of the business. They talk. I think it's important to see the lessons learned in DTC. For example, as we consider launching wholesale in New York, our DTC data is very interesting to them. How much volume have we done? Have we already built a consumer that's very loyal? So we can take data from it that is helpful when expanding to wholesale states, but we manage them in two very different ways. We have two very different marketing budgets for them because you attack it in such different ways. You know, managing a launch in New York City on the ground, in store, very, very different from direct to consumer. So we just have two very different top level strategies for growing the business there, and different teams that are managing them. But what I love about it is that we've been able to grow so fast across the company. We have 13 states of wholesale distribution, and we have the licensing for 38 states that we ship direct to. So we ship to almost most people to their door, and more every year we're growing our wholesale business to expand there as well. My idea would be to continue to expand wholesale in the same way that we have DTC, get on the shelf in as many states as possible.
Well, like you said, they're different. And so the wholesale side, just an article recently, I think maybe we talked about it briefly before we got on camera here, but there's been a lot of consolidation, unfortunately, in Los Angeles market, for instance. Brands like Epic and some other smaller wholesalers got sucked up by RNDC or Southern, or now Wine Warehouse got bought. And so to get recognition from the sales force that are out there, for the listeners, what happens is a distributor will take on the Wander and Ivy wines. Dana will go in and have a sales pitch with the sales group, and then they're going to go out on the street and sell it to the wine shops and liquor stores and restaurants, wherever they're pouring these. And, you know, you got to get their attention somehow.
Oh, yeah.
And it's getting more crowded in that book to get their attention. Are you on the street, or do you have representatives out on the street, you know, making these presentations?
Yes. And yes, yes, and yes to all of that.
That's what we're doing.
I mean, I feel like we could have a whole discussion just on this, Paul, because there are so many pros, I think, in working with the big guys, particularly when we're fortunate enough to have grown chain business. And so from an execution standpoint and a credibility standpoint, that's huge when working with one of the big distributors, so that the chains like Kroger or Safeway Albertsons know that you can execute. And so that's been very successful for us. But huge flaws in the system are what you just highlighted, in that the portfolios are consolidated so much. You can be such a small fish in this big pond, and how do you get anybody's attention? For us, fortunately, we are so different in the single serve category. We are so unique. We are so innovative that almost always, if we can get the product in someone's hand, it at least gets their attention. And so we can at least set the meeting, get our foot in the door. They then taste the product, and we have that meeting. So we have the opportunities. Oftentimes, though, I will tell you, Paul, we are bringing to the distributors business that we've already won, and therefore launching into new states because of business that Wander and Ivy has won and worked really hard for. And so from there, distributors pick it up and can build and grow it. But we also have people on the street that are growing it as well. So one of, I think, the hard lessons learned for me is that Wander and Ivy is just growing a business like this. It is crucial for us to invest in the sales and marketing, knowing that these portfolios are so large. It's so hard to get anybody's attention.
Mm-hmm.
We have some really great partners and some really strong partners across the country, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of investment to get attention. And thankfully, our unique bottle, our unique product, our differentiators can get us there. But it's, I think, a constant work with those partners to just try to stay in front of them. It's hard, though.
It's very hard. I see that. I obviously, with all the relationships we've built over the years, and I see them change so rapidly.
Yeah.
Was this the lifestyle that you expected when you got into the wine business? In other words, many people go to Napa and they have their tasting experience and they go, "Oh, this is amazing. And I want to own a vineyard and I want to live up here." Then they find out how hard it is to make $1. And, you got to, particularly in Napa, you got to, just sell your bottle for $150 just to break even. And then it becomes, sort of more difficult than you expected. But in this case, were you looking at that lifestyle as a wine brand owner because it seemed romantic, or we're like, we're going to be brass tacks and make this thing work?
It's funny. I would early on get questions, especially from my dear grandma, who I love her, like, how much wine are you drinking every day? Correct her, like, no, this is something I think I had the luxury of getting to know so many entrepreneurs building it, my dad included, but such a luxury of getting to know other entrepreneurs and how challenging it was. And I did get a lot of advice early on. I'm fortunate that my network is full of entrepreneurs that have struggled and hustled. And I heard often that advice of, this is going to be challenging, but if you really put your head down, believe in it, and have a passion behind what you're doing, this can be really successful. But it is going to require a tremendous amount of work and be really, really challenging. There's a reason, like you said, why not a lot of people do it. It's really, really hard. I would say certainly romanticized versions, I think, of more bigger picture of starting a business and owning your own business. And then you start it and you realize this is a lot of hard work. Certainly not a trip out tonight. It was funny. My husband and I just did our first personal trip to Napa for the first time. And
wow.
So years. And we thought, wow, this is nice. So,
yeah. Did you get the bug? You're like, whoa, I want to do this.
Yeah. And so I was like, this is really lovely. But no, I will say from early on, I was just lucky to get a lot of good advice of, this is going to be heads down, a lot of work. And if you're up for it, it can be a awesome journey, but it's going to be a lot of hard work.
Well, and you're going to, the lifestyle, look, it's kind of like the airline industry, where the romanticism of flying and going worldwide, you don't make a lot of money. And that's what most people in the street will tell you, but man, you have the greatest meals. And one winemaker told me, he goes, "I've met the most amazing people, been the most amazing places, drank the most amazing wine, and ate the most amazing food."
Yeah.
I can live with that, right? I can live with that.
Yeah.
Your end game is going to be to build this brand, of course, and hopefully do other things. What do you think is next? Is it varietal changes, bottle size changes? You have a patent on this product already as far as the packaging is concerned, but what's your next level of sort of entrepreneurship? Are we going to look at more varietals? I have 4 here.
Yeah, so you have 4. So we're constantly thinking about, okay, what can we do that's new and exciting, innovative, something that our consumers are really looking for. We consistently heard that a Sauvignon Blanc from a varietal standpoint was something that our consumer is really looking for, both wholesale and DTC. So we're launching our Sauvignon Blanc in about a month or 2. And so that's really exciting from a varietal standpoint. From innovation standpoint, I'm incredibly excited to be adding sparkling, which very well from a technical standpoint. Wow. It is quite challenging to add consistent bubbles to this packaging. And so our own custom Wander and Ivy bottling line will allow us to do just that. And so that is incredibly exciting. And then really just from a packaging standpoint, we're always thinking about what can we do that's in line with the trends that consumers are looking for, but in our own custom Wander and Ivy way. So we have a couple, like I mentioned, 4 packs and other packaging that is quite different from others that are there on the shelf right now, and will really pop on the shelf. So exciting. We're always thinking about, we have a lot of other things in the pipeline for kind of 2024. And just, I think that's required in this industry to stay ahead of the curve, is doing something innovative that we think our consumers are really looking for.
Well, as Kevin O'Leary told me, the famed Shark Tank guy, when he was on the
Yeah.
show, was, what works today is not going to work tomorrow. What works tomorrow is not going to work the next day. And that's, and, a lot of industries are like that, but wine and consumerism is it's so wacky right now because the post-COVID world has created all kinds of unknowns for us as we go through this. So it's really exciting to hear that you stumbled across this thing and that you stumbled across it. You actually created this thing, and that you're poised to make the changes you need to make. You mentioned Sauvignon Blanc. I think it was French, right?
French Sauvignon Blanc, yes.
Or Loire, or
yes, exactly. So that's coming and very soon, which is great. So it's all teed up, and like I said, it's just, we're often asking our consumers via surveys, as well as, of course, our folks on the street, of what more are folks looking for. And we hear it all the time. I was just at a distributor meeting that said, it was almost as if I planted the question. She said, well, okay, you have a Chardonnay, but if you had a Sauvignon Blanc, and I said, I have great news for you. And so we're just trying to listen to what folks are hearing on the street, what they are craving, and try to deliver that as quickly as possible.
It'll never cease to amaze you as to what varietals become, popular and which ones wane.
Yeah.
Obviously the movie Sideways, Rex Pickett's been on the show a couple times, changed the consumption of Merlot forever. It's sort of bounced back recently. It's taken like 10 years, maybe even more.
Yeah.
But I went to dinner the other night at a Spanish restaurant with my cousin, who is a total wine rookie. And he orders a Sancerre. So the first problem is that you don't order Sancerre at a Spanish restaurant because they probably don't have it.
Yeah.
But the bigger point was, what do you know from Sancerre from anything? But it's so popular as Sauvignon Blanc in this particular region. I'm like, wow, it's a head tilter for me. Like, wow, what did he learn about Sauvignon Blanc or Sancerre? That's so interesting. What is your current fascination? I mean, when you get into this business and since you studied wine through the different platforms, do you have a fascination of things you're
I love that question. For me, I'm also deep in it, as you could tell from the sparkling standpoint, of really how to nail it in an alternative packaging, because I think it's really it's not done that well across the alternative packaging space. And so it's fascinating to me to be able to get it so technically correct, I feel like, and consistent across the board, which is so challenging. And I just love bubbles in particular. So that's something that I just love, feels very celebratory. And so the technical side of that, I'm very interested in right now, and getting it right, and very consistent in our packaging, which is just challenging in general to bottle, but that adds another layer of complexity that I know.
I want you to get into the wine side now. Now we're off of the business side. We're off of the packaging, because I taught my son-in-law champagne, and now that's costing me a fortune to keep my daughter and her son-in-law in champagne. But so we love it. But I mean, a district of the world, a varietal, something that just tickles your fancy that you want to continue your education on.
The area of the world that I really want to continue my education on is South America. I feel because we haven't yet sourced from there, I really haven't dug into that area of the world yet from a business standpoint, but from a personal standpoint as well. I that is an area where I think I could explore more, and it's exciting. I actually also I've been to Peru, I've been to some areas in South America, but I also think just personally making a trip that's wine focused in South America would be lovely.
Comes with the territory.
And so I think that's a high on my list in terms of some place that I see so much to learn from, but also it would just be a lovely experience.
Argentina has eclipsed, in my opinion, the Chilean side of things, and for whatever reason, but because Malbec's such an interesting grape, it's very elevation sensitive. So they've been doing some crazy experiments with different elevations up the Andes to see what Malbec produce. I think it's fascinating. But the other one's Uruguay. There's some crazy Tanat out of Uruguay and some pretty polished things that, and obviously, I don't know if from a 187, single serve standpoint, Tanat's necessarily the grape that's going to fly off the shelf, but it's such an interesting part of the world. My current fascination, which is a very expensive one, is Burgundy.
Yeah, it's a little pricey.
And they say all roads, all enophiles end up in Burgundy
Yeah.
because of the complexities and the interesting history.
Yeah.
This goes back to that philosophy that we sort of touched on, in that honest glass of wine,
Yeah.
which is to express a sense of time and a sense of place.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're bringing wines from Valencia, like, you plop that on the table and say, this is what Valencia is and when it was.
Yeah.
And as long as you're doing that, I think you've got a great inroad to this crazy, complicated, congested industry. And you're a woman, obviously.
Yes,
I always feel funny saying that. Like,
yes, I am.
so, but it's a huge thing now, and I'm wondering how that plays out with you, because it's I've had a lot of brilliant women on the show. Like I just mentioned, Chiara Bellota from Aubryon Wine. She's, one of the most fascinating historians of wine I've ever spoken with.
Yeah.
Is that giving you, I'm not going to say an advantage, but is it giving you an entree into certain positions because of that?
It certainly gives us another point of differentiation, because there are very few of us. Interestingly, we're rounding out Women's History Month, and International Women's Day. It gives us an opportunity to, I think, be elevated. We have some major distribution partners that have elevated, the 4 or 5 of us in the industry, because there aren't a lot of us. So they'll say, okay, they'll put us on a quota, which is great, with these distributors. It's a way to get noticed, to just get your face seen in such a crowded portfolio in something like Women's Month, where they say, hey, let's elevate the 3 to 5 brands that are founded and run by women. That it's been great for us. As an investor, it's important, and it's great that more and more distributors are doing it. Obviously, more and more change. Like Target does a great job, and during this month in particular, highlighting all the women-owned brands that they have. I was just going to mention, as an investor-backed company, I'd say that's where the most challenges have been, in that women still only receive 2% of all funding, which seems crazy, but it's true. And so in raising funds to build a new business that is innovative, it's quite a challenge, because men tend to get most of the funding. Super proud that we're of the 2%, but it's still quite small. So there are pros and cons. We get elevated. It is a point of differentiation, but it's still within an overarching male-dominated industry. And so it's oftentimes sharing our product to older males that aren't necessarily our target demographic, and having them really understand the product takes some time sometimes, versus just sharing it directly to our target demographic. So challenges for sure, but I really love the platform to be able to represent diversity and show different thinking in a category that has been pretty driven by men. Love that you've had so many women on. You've had amazing women on.
There have been pretty amazing conversations.
Yeah.
I almost gave my wife an extra point of the company. Make it
So
51-49, so it become.
Well, funny enough, I understand that as a certified women-owned company, at the beginning, you have to prove so much that it's not a front, that I'm not just, a woman front, because so many businesses apparently do that, truly trying to, get that recognition. So I had, they come to my house and look at my ID and make sure I'm actually running it and all of that. But just side story, but being a minority, like, we're also certified disability owned. I have syndactyly, and that is another area of just representing diversity and something different. And so any way that I can use the platform for good to represent diversity with our distributors, chains, it's an awesome way to elevate the brand and to connect with consumers, for sure.
I guarantee if you walk in here, you'll see that Sandra, my wife, is in the mix big time.
Oh, I love that. That's
sometimes,
but it's fabulous. That's amazing. I hear you though.
She's great. She's awesome. She's actually a licensed CPA, so she, understands that side of the business very well.
Yeah, she keeps you in track.
It's very important. I will say I made more money when she wasn't around, because I wrote everything off. Now it's legit.
she's like, all right, Paul, we gotta.
We're already on 50 minutes. It's been a fascinating conversation. I hope we can do it again.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
I think we can peel back some other things and some other subjects.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to see how the next step goes. Love to see your packaging line when it happens.
Thank
I literally go to the Westpac, which is in Southern
Yeah.
California here every year,
Yeah.
just to see what's going on.
Yeah. Well, maybe I can host you one time and you can take a
Yeah,
look.
that'd be great.
Yeah, we'd love
And
that.
of course, I don't think I've been to Colorado for quite a long time, but if we're ever in town, we'd love to taste some wine with you and just have some fun. If you're in the same when you're in LA.
That sounds fabulous. Let's do it.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Wine Talks with Paul Kalamkarian. Don't forget to subscribe because there's more great interviews on their way. And of course, all these podcasts are sponsored by the original Wine of the Month Club, 48 years in business. Don't forget to visit our website, wineofthemonthclub.com. Folks, have a great time out there in the wine world. Cheers.